welcome to the second week of 30 Days Challenge. So just a recap from last session, the purpose of the data analytics is just bringing everyone from different strengths in data profession together and help each other out to grow and learn, and also provide an opportunity for each other to hopefully, especially in this 30-day challenge, achieve your dream career. This space is a data-focused ask and answer platform. So feel free to go and jump on into any topics, join any groups, and ask your question or share your insights. I think, Brandon, you had a great post yesterday. It's really good to see that, people just posting articles and also sharing any information that we can find from other resources. So it's great to see that this type of collaboration is happening. In terms of this challenge, so we are on the second week of the 30-day challenge. The purpose of this challenge is tap onto the four main sort of a domain within the data career. So how can you establish your data career using the information that we're providing in this session? So last week we talked about the data career path, different pathways that you can actually get into the data profession. This week we are focusing on different technology and how you can upskill yourself, and whether you're going to go down the path of online courses or go to the universities, and we're going to discuss those type of sort of avenues. So feel free to add your questions in the chat box or just ask them in the Q&A session. So without any further ado, let's get into this. So Sean, I'm just going to hand it over to you to take us through the deferring tech and upskilling. So I'm just going to stop sharing and you can share your screen, Sean.
Yeah, sure.
It'll be good now.
Great. So thanks, Ria, for giving me the chance to present. Because this is a fairly small group, feel free for anyone to just jump in and ask any particular questions or give insights. I know, Nahid, if you're a data engineer, there might be some others that are covered here as well. So I think your insights would be great. And I think, Ria, there's also a section at the end, which is probably a good segment of this, a Q&A. So you can almost do a round table and to address any particular questions as well. So I guess I'll cover various aspects of varying tech and upskilling. The first one is from Towards Data Science, and it looked at a sort of a data analytics survey trying to identify the various skill sets needed in today's world. And I guess over the last decade, the complexity and the growth of various tools has been enormous. So it can be quite confusing if you're starting in this area or you're wanting to sort of do a sideways step into another role, such as data analysts into data engineering. And so I guess knowing where to start, I think, is quite good. What this sort of survey highlighted is the sort of the continued popularity in Python, and R has had quite significant growth as well. So I guess covering just Python and R, they provide sort of a really good foundation for data analysis, both programming languages. They both have their strengths and weaknesses. I think the strength for Python is it's perhaps more general purpose, and it's used quite heavily in data engineering and data integration work and data cleaning, perhaps a little bit more stable. Whereas R has its backgrounds in statistical analysis. So I guess in the sort of early days of data science, it was quite popular. But I'd say now it's started to shift more towards Python as a key programming language. So if you had to pick one, perhaps look at Python. I started with R and probably picked up a few bad habits, whereas Python, you're looking at perhaps a more structured way of writing code. The other one that I think is a must-have is SQL. So they're sort of complementary to either Python or R. It's sort of a key way to extract and do some transformation from a data warehouse. I think it's a must-have. SQL's really easy to learn. There are plenty of great tutorials. So feel free to ask the community or myself if you want to know more about that. And then I think we go into quite specific programming languages, which vary in different popularity and might depend on the organization that you're in. So perhaps C++ is sort of the standout when you're looking at greater automation, but you have some software specific programming languages, and it might be through AWS, TensorFlow, Tableau, Power BI. Power BI has sort of DAX code that you look at very specific calculations. So hopefully that gives you an overview of different languages that you might use to interact with data. Towards the right, we have a variety of different data and analytic tools, and there's tens of thousands of these. So I guess cover the ones that I might use. I've sort of shifted from Tableau to Power BI for data consumption and data visualization. I have used ClickView before as well. Excel, I think, is really good fallback for very quick and dirty type of analysis. I've listed Jupyter as well, with data science teams especially. Being able to share a Jupyter notebook where you can see the code, also visualize it, is quite helpful, and has a lot more customization when compared to something like Power BI, which is probably more general use. And then you have some other tools. So when I started in banking, SAS was really popular, but I was able to sort of change the team more towards R. And again, similar sort of functionality with customized code, visualization, data manipulation, and a hell of a lot cheaper. So R is open source and free, whereas SAS is, I think, around 10 grand per license, quite expensive. And the very bottom, Apache Airflow is a tool that I highly recommend for data engineers. So there's a lot of proprietary GUI-based software, which is really sort of general in usage. Apache Airflow sort of leverages the Python programming language skill set and is a really good way to create reliable and highly customized data pipelines, depending on what you're trying to integrate. The data warehouses that I've used tend to have dozens, if not more, different data integrations. At the university that I work in at the moment, there are at least 100 different data sources of potential insight. There's a lot more than that, but they're the ones that we've identified, and leveraging Apache Airflow is a must-have because we can have that customization. Otherwise, we'll be utilizing 4+ different data integration tools, which is not ideal and takes a lot to resource. The next slide is sort of continuation. So we've sort of seen a lot of advantages moving towards the cloud, and each of sort of the 3 clouds that I've identified here have various pros and cons, but there's a lot of similarity too. So I won't go into too much detail. I know with sort of AWS and Azure, they have invested a lot more recently, and there's a lot of similar capability in how you use services to ingest data, store it, and also visualize it. Power BI, especially with Azure. Databases, there's sort of been an evolution here. There's sort of a lot of legacy on-prem databases that most organizations will use at the moment. There is a shift towards native cloud. And I guess the realization that if you started with a relational database, Oracle, SQL Server, there might be some limitations in how you use that and how you share that to a greater audience. If we sort of look at that as a timeline in the 90s, sort of Teradata came up with their solutions around enterprise data and distribution. And sort of in 2010, you're looking at the advent of big data and Facebook not necessarily knowing how to process petabytes worth of information. So you're looking at your Vertica, Hadoop, and Redshift solutions. And now, I guess you're seeing sort of modern data architecture being threaded through that. And Snowflake having quite a particular use case for cloud native data warehousing where you can have higher scalability. So you're looking at auto provisioning up and down, and you're looking at a managed service. So I guess the role of a traditional DBA, I think, is declining, and that's starting to fit towards data engineering capabilities, which I think is really growing. And I guess it's a more flexible role dealing with the horizontal aspect of data integration, as well as the specialized aspects with the variety of different data sources. And some of that is covered in the bottom left in data integration. So we're no longer just dealing with your structured data. There's unstructured, dealing with sort of textual data or web, image files, video and audio. And now even looking at sensor data and microservices and sort of metadata that might be attached to that. So there's an immense complexity in how you might treat some of those data sources. And I guess the traditional databases aren't necessarily well placed to deal with that. But if you can sort of leverage sort of modern data architecture to the right with a variety of different cloud services, you'll be quite well placed to really advancing data analytics. Moving from varying technology to architecture, I think it's good to have this in the back of your mind. So there are tens of thousands of different ways to process data and information, different tools. It's good to at least have a common understanding of different data architecture. And here is sort of a lineage when dealing with one particular cloud vendor. It's not probably the recommendation. You might be threaded across a few different cloud vendors. So I think it's really about understanding the business and the customers that you're working with, and then choosing the appropriate pathway. What's probably key to this slide is at the very top, knowing that there are different activities associated with data. So if we're looking at segmenting activities from source systems, you're looking at how information is produced. You're getting into a data engineering activity through ingestion, or maybe even data analysis, if you're looking at just basic exploration. You might have a capability for stream processing. So if there's a business need to look at more frequent information, it might be per second, or it might be daily. There may not be a requirement for this. And then there are a variety of ways to store that information as well. So if you're looking at architecture of data lake capabilities, you might be storing flat files into an S3 bucket within AWS, for instance. And that information is discoverable. And some of that information might actually be structured in a logical way for business interpretation into a data warehouse. And then from the data warehouse, you'll have a variety of ways to present that information. So there's a lot of flexibility here. I think it takes years to sort of master, and you never quite master it because things are always advancing. But I think keeping on top of different architecture is really helpful to providing good solutions to the business. The next area is around upskilling. So there's a variety of different online courses that you can complete. I've sort of dabbled with a variety of sort of free courses, and also like through Udemy, and also through Coursera. These are some examples through Coursera. I think, picking on Coursera, you can also get certification at the end. This helps to sort of build out your CV and resume, and allow you to sort of specialize in a particular area or go quite wide. So these are short courses. Some of them are quite easy to complete, and I think it's a good recommendation to at least try it out. I think ask the community as well. There's a variety of different learnings online that are free and that are also paid. The next area is experience. So it's sort of the chicken or the egg sort of question. I can't land a job because I don't necessarily have the job experience. But I'm finding a lot of employers are taking a risk and saying they've got some Kaggle experience, or especially within data science, if they've placed in the top 10% of the competition, that it's actually very attractive to employers, even if they haven't gotten actual work experience. So I think looking at ways, creative ways to really boost your CV, there are opportunities out there. Kaggle is one of those examples. And if you don't want to do a competition, I think general polishing of skill sets through the publicly available data sets is a really good opportunity too. So I recently saw a post by Javid, and he did a great sentiment analysis on Twitter posts, and quite topical with the election going on at the moment, and will also allow you to sort of showcase key work where there might be a gap of awareness, where people are sort of craving for that information. So I think by polishing your skill sets, you might be able to share it and also get your name out there, and that makes you really attractive, I think. And that goes into brand. So there are a number of different sort of communities. I think Analytics Roundtable being one of them, where you can share your ideas, collaborate, and work with individuals to showcase an idea or a piece of work. Medium is one of those sources. You also have LinkedIn, Twitter, and Analytics Roundtable. I think if you've done a really good piece of analysis, why not share it to the world, depending on what it is, and a really good way to get your name out there. And the last area that I wanted to cover is SME experience. So that was sort of a really good diagram that I posted earlier, which sort of told a story of effective insights. And that was sort of combining a bit of data wrangling, data engineering experience with statistics, mathematics, and then also SME experience and understanding your subject matter, and there's soft skills attached to that as well. If you have a good understanding of, or even a very basic understanding of all those three elements, or you could partner with an individual where you identify a gap on those three areas, then I think that's a really good way to generate value for an organization. If you're missing one of those elements, there might be risks attached to that. So the SME area it could be about understanding the industry that you're in, whether it's oil and gas, health, insurance, education. There are soft skills that might be attached to that as well. So change management being one of those. I know building a data analytics capability within an organization, there might be varying speeds. Your data analytics team might be at 5 times speed, and your business might be in negative speed. So change management and understanding how you can explain really complex ideas in a simple way can be a really good way to progress ideas faster than you would normally. Business analysis, quite crucial to successful project delivery, understanding the requirements from the business and being able to translate sort of the common business understanding to the technical understanding, so that your data engineers and data scientists can really understand what they're heading towards. Project management, so an understanding of resource utilization and cost management is quite crucial. A lot of analytics or data projects do tend to fail. There's a lot of hype. So I think combining business analysis with project management is key to ensure something that is realistic. And then communications. So celebrating your wins, understand how to talk to varying levels of the organization. There might be governance groups attached to a senior executive level that deal with data. So they have a specific language that you need to work through. And then you've got more sort of general communications, and that could be as simple as like notifications or alerts when something has gone down, to working in more of a consultative manner and getting feedback over time on service delivery.
To let you know how this part of the session works, we have a Q&A, so please feel free to unmute yourself, ask any question. We've got Brandon from the recruitment side, and Brandon can add a lot of insight in terms of what are the technical skills and upskilling that would be more kind of interested for any organization that are looking for a talent. Also Nahid from she's a data engineer, so welcome Nahid, and great to have you here on the Q&A panel. it would be great to hear your insight as well, and what has been your experience in terms of what we just discussed. And Sean, I guess if anyone has any question, we're gonna pose it to you as well, whether it's from the presentation or just any question. I've got one question that I may just start the Q&A off, and it's from Shoresh. He's asking that, what about Alteryx? So in your presentation, would you like to cover a little bit about that?
Yeah, I can cover it a little bit, and I'm definitely keen to hear what others think too.
Yes.
Alteryx is a fantastic tool. I accidentally missed it. It wasn't intentional. I think it's a great data analysis tool. So it's sort of like the Swiss Army knife for data analysts. It allows you to do some data pipelining. That might be from a data lake capability to some early data analysis, some very rough automation. I don't think it necessarily replaces some of the foundational tools like if it's Glue or Apache Airflow for some of the data engineering work, but it can be a very good first step, and it provides a variety of functionality. I've used it for a lot of those things, and we're starting to use it for data science automation.
Thanks, Sean. I may go to Brendan first, if that's okay, Brendan. If you would like to add, your insight in terms of the technical skills, and also any sort of a upskilling that you would suggest or you've seen, within your candidates.
Yeah, so at the moment, there's a big push for really niche talents, especially in the data engineering space as it moves to the cloud. But one thing that really stands out is not only when you go and get your certification. So I've got a lot of candidates who have Azure certificates, but then haven't done any practical work with it. So something that's really big at the moment is making sure you actually get your certification and move into a practical aspect, whether you do your own project at home or you use it in a commercial instance. Make sure you have some hands-on experience with each of those tools.
Nahid, gonna come to you. If we can have your view on that as well, please.
Yeah, so I sort of agree with whatever Sean and Braden said. So it's a lot of tools currently, I guess, in the market, and it's really hard, I guess, for our engineers to get like all of them, or at least a majority of them. So I guess from my perspective, I guess I'm still learning myself. So it's sort of a never-ending sort of journey for us as like engineers or being in IT in general, to sort of we always have to keep up. Like, just give you sort of a personal example. I just came back from maternity leave a few months back, and I found that, okay, only just few months being away from, that IT world and that technology world, that made me to sort of feel like, okay, I'm a bit behind now. I just started sort of doing self-study and doing a lot of online courses as well. And yeah, so I guess I'm doing a lot of recruitment at the moment as well. And for me, technology and tool is one aspect of it. And but this is honestly not all I seek when I'm looking into the resumes and talking to the people, especially sort of hiring more junior people. So I do understand that might not be feasible for someone to have that experience yet in their resumes working with a specific tool set. But what I more try to be focused on is just that understanding of the concepts, as of like sort of how to use those tools, or why do we use it, and what are the sort of best practices which can then be applied using any tool. Just like, can you hear me well? It's because I'm hearing myself, sorry.
I can hear you well.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, sorry, I don't know what happened then. So yeah, so I guess like in the data engineering aspect, especially like a lot of resumes coming in these days, a lot of sort of brilliant young people having done like a master of data science, or have worked with on a lot of sort of open source tools, done a lot of sort of Udacity milestone projects, nano degree technologies. That's all fantastic, but when they come into the interview, I do appreciate all their efforts, just being so passionate about all this technology and tools. But what I want to know is that if they know the concepts behind building a data warehouse, like the modeling concepts, different layers of a data warehouse. So sort of using the integration tool is one aspect of it, and they can be used using like a various technology. And I guess if someone is sharp enough to have gone through all those certification, I've done on a lot of projects. So to me, it's sort of very easy for them to pick up the tools quickly. But then if they do not know the concepts, that's something that I cannot sort of help them without knowing that lag, to be honest. Like if someone come to me and say, okay, I've worked with this tool, and then I can, if I leave them on their own, not knowing that they have a lack of that knowledge of concepts, it's something which becomes dangerous, just along the road. So yeah, that's what I was probably trying to say. Just tools is one aspect of it, but that's not all. So I would I do still my best to get on top of majority of those tools, but that's not all of my focus, I guess.
Thanks, Nahid. That was great. We've got another question. Now, this is very technical for me, so apologies if I'm not pronouncing it correctly, all you data, geniuses. So it's, Shoresh is asking double SIS and Redshift and question mark. So I'll let you decode it for me.
SQL Server Integration Services, and then Redshift. I think they both have a place. But I do see in the next few years, they'll start to get phased out. Working at one of the banks, they used Microsoft SQL Server, which was sort of developed in sort of the late 90s. SSIS, it's been used for more than a decade now, and is sort of very traditional to on-prem data warehousing. I think they've incorporated, Microsoft has SSIS into a data, it's now online. I forget what it's called though. I used it previously, but it has changed. So I think those requirements are slightly different now. And there is a need to look at, I guess, unstructured data in organizations. So how do you actually feed that into the integration tool? So for SSIS, it doesn't necessarily have strong capabilities in dealing with different APIs. Whereas you could look at Apache Airflow, or I think even Glue, and that's a little bit more flexible of a framework. And then Redshift, I still think has its place. It was developed in Amazon Web Services. What I think we're dealing with now, though, is less reliance on a DBA and the ability to be able to auto provision up and down and reduce cost. There are some really good competitors to Redshift at the moment that allows for some of those things. And especially with COVID hitting and a lot of business being impacted, that there's a number of different ways you can reduce costs, and there's really good value propositioning from some of those competitors. I hope that's answered it. That's my 2 cents.
Thanks, John. Anyone, Nahid or Brendan, any of you wanted to add anything to that? I've got another question from Kuldeep. From you're asking question from Nahid, I think. What are the underlying concepts you were referring to? Algorithms? Can you give a few examples, please?
Yeah, so I sort of refer to the data warehousing concepts and sort of the best practices in integrate, like the data ingestion. So like as an example, I usually ask sort of candidates, so what are the different layers of a data warehouse they've worked with? So using a tool to bring data into the data warehouse, okay, that's one aspect of it, and you can use various tools, but you need to know that how to actually make that data flow from one layer to another layer, and why do we need all those sort of layers in between, and what are each layer's purposes, so what each layer is actually there for, and what each layer sort of the data modeling in each layer, how can that be different from the other layers? So that's something that I call maybe that's not the terminology that everyone's used, but that's basically what I mean. But data warehouse, actually the concepts behind designing a data warehouse. and also like the best practices in sort of ingesting the data either parallelly or it just when it's actually go to the presentation layer, what's the best practices in modeling the data in the presentation layer, and what are the also best practices actually make it actually user accessible, what are all those user access points, and even managing security around it, like how you're going to actually let your now they have your data warehouse, how you're going to actually manage your users to actually get access to it, like how do you group your users into what are the best practices around that one. Which I guess these are the things that to be honest, I think that's something that will actually come out. We're actually working on project and being like a sort of hands-on on different projects. But again, there are a lot of good articles out there. For each of those. So if you have any question about any of them, just feel free to ping me here or on LinkedIn. And I will be do my best to actually provide those resources for you as well.
Thanks, Nahi. That was great. I think I may just change the gears a little bit, because this is a 30-day challenge for our community that they want to kind of think about their career, whether they want to upskill or they had a change of career or they are new to the data profession. A question that I'm thinking is that, and I think, Sean, I'm just posing it to you, in terms of the programming languages, the data analytics tool, what would be the very sort of a first step if you want to categorize it for someone who's in a data entry? I'm looking at the list of all the programming languages, and if someone is new to the data and wants to start a career, they may actually feel a little bit intimidated, or they feel that maybe they are not confident enough, just because there are so many different programming languages that they may know one or two, but not all of them. So how would you sort of categorize it for someone from just entering into the data profession, that's someone that actually want to upskill, so, sort of like the other end of the scale, if it makes sense?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. So the first place to start, I think, would be SQL. So knowing how to communicate to a database to be able to extract information. That's probably coming more from like a data analyst. So you don't necessarily want your data analyst to keep on relying on an individual who knows how to extract data. SQL is really easy to learn, is a really good first step. So with that understanding, you're able to be almost self-dependent, and you can look at a data warehouse, know which sort of tables to extract, maybe do some data manipulation, data quality, look at creating a query that you can reuse. And with that query, you can then look at extracting some data, put that into a data visualization tool, or even in Excel, depending on the size, and look at servicing some initial business needs and start creating value. I think that's probably a first step. For individuals that are looking at advancing that further, I think it's really good to know a programming language like Python. We've seen a lot with data science capabilities and different algorithms that a lot of the development is through Python, and there are plenty of libraries that look at levels of automation within that process. So I think having a base understanding of Python enables you to write a few lines of code and very quickly see some of those results. And I think using Google and different sort of communities, you're able to quickly find out which libraries are more efficient. So I think developing your network can help you advance faster, some of those programming languages. And nowadays, you don't necessarily need to do something from scratch. You can look at leveraging a library, look at the various parameters or functionality, and use that. So instead of writing paragraphs or pages of code, it might only be a few lines. And I think it's quite interesting too. So the layers of the database, I think, is really important, understanding that. I had a candidate for a data engineer role not quite progressed through because they didn't necessarily know how to talk to an API to be able to extract data. And so when we're looking at something that might be slightly more modern, interacting with APIs, I think, is becoming the norm. And if you have a good understanding of Python, there are libraries that deal with that very simply. So you're able to call upon the library, look at what the API is, and be able to extract and interact with it. And so those automations and efficiencies are actually a breath of fresh air, and I think is probably a good place to start.
Thanks, John. And how about the data analytics tools? So we talked about Power BI, Tableau, and other, and good old Excel. How about the other ones? If someone wants to start off, which one would you suggest that they start from, and would be probably the one that tie back into their analytical tool like Python and R?
So I think it depends. If you're a data scientist, a good place to start is using Python with Jupyter notebooks. If you look at Kaggle, they've embedded that into their sort of notebook discussions, and they actually provide some really good ideas and also downloadable content, so you can execute that locally. And it might be some really good data analysis and data manipulation within that. If it's for a business or enterprise, there's so many different tools, but I think the main ones are Tableau, Power BI, and for some of your sort of more tech-focused organizations, Looker is another one too. If you wanted to get experience without paying for something, then I believe Power BI has some free sort of functionality where you can just dabble and explore, whereas the others tend to be paid.
I think Kuldeep is adding TIBCO and Spotfire as well.
Cool. I haven't heard of those. Has anyone heard of those? Able to shed some light?
Spotfire.
I think Kuldeep gonna share the light. Now you're gonna be presenting on those things, Kuldeep.
Yeah, no, we at ASX actually use Tableau, Spotfire for a lot of visualizations. It's pretty good, especially for streaming data, like all the trading data which is streaming massive amount of data. They're very good at visualizing those kind of stuff, and that's what we use for it. Might be good for this stuff. I don't know.
That's cool. And I found a really good resource this morning, and it might be on this list. It's dataviz.cafe, and it basically combines dozens of open source visualization frameworks. So I think it's quite fun to be able to just dabble with those frameworks. So those frameworks include D3, which is a JavaScript library, Chart.js, Plotly. They've got Superset, which is based on Python. Superset was actually a pretty cool tool as well. It's open source. It was, I think, developed by Airbnb, and they've now got over 100 different contributors, different organizations that really improve the functionality. It doesn't cost anything, and all you need is a server. So you could host that and almost implement it for your organization. The Iconic implemented that as part of their suite of tools, and they replaced it with Tableau. We were thinking of doing it, but then we realized our audience wasn't quite there. So I think looking at those tools, you also need to look at the audience that you're delivering to, and either keep it really simple, or if it's got some collaboration or advanced functionality, develop a plan to improve data literacy. But I'll definitely check out TIBCO, Spotfire.
Thanks, Kuldeep. And I think that's a great example of the value that community bring to the members, to be able to get to know new things and share your insight and your experience that it might be new to other members. So thank you so much for sharing that. That was great. I think we are almost approaching to the end of the session. So I'm gonna ask you if you have any sort of a last minute question that you want to ask. If not, I've got one more question for you, Sean.
Well, anyone got any questions or any insights that they wanted to share on this?
I think we and also if you come now thought about any questions later than you wanted to ask, feel free to jump onto the we put the recording of this session, so feel free to jump on and put it as a comment, and we definitely make sure that we get to those questions. But the last question that I wanted to ask you, Sean, was about the courses. So we covered the online courses, like Coursera and so forth. But my question was that, again, as this is a 30 days challenge for for the members that they want to kind of excel in their career, or they are entering to the data profession, what would be maybe a couple of courses that you think that they can actually jump on them right now, and that can excel their career? And also I want to hear Brendan's maybe insight on that as well from the recruitment side, if that's okay, Brendan.
Yes, maybe if I start, it's Coursera, if you can. There's also great discussion groups, and you might sort of complement the role that you're trying to apply for. So if you're a data engineer, focus on data engineering specific courses, and that will talk about how you might interact with the data warehouse, the multiple layers. Those layers could talk about sort of an object data store, and then how that could be sort of your data lake capability, where you've got really unstructured information, and then how you move that into either a star schema or data vault typology. And then at the end, you've got your sort of reporting layer, and that could also be a star schema as well. As a data engineer, you need to know those types of things. And Nahid highlighted that quite well. If you're a data analyst, there would be like a really good business interpretation lens to that, how you use different data visualization tools. There might be specific projects of data analysis that you could incorporate. I think there are plenty of courses on data analysis, and that also covers the skills of SQL as a programming language as well. And then I think complementing it with soft skills. So Suresh, I think, has highlighted that well. He's mentioned communication, storytelling. Paul Hodge, I think, is a good person to look at as well. He's the data viz guy. He's got some really interesting ways to look at storytelling capabilities. I think data also definitely covers data science capabilities. So if you're looking at statistics and algorithms and looking at calculus and linear algebra, they're all foundation to data science. They're sort of must-haves. Otherwise, you fall into a trap where you've done a particular model which might be misspecified, and you've launched it and actually does more harm than good. A basic understanding of different algorithms. So you've got different machine learning techniques of supervised and unsupervised. You've also got deep learning and neural networks, which operate a little bit differently. There's different complexity with that. So depending on the maturity of the organization, you might be able to start with the easier aspects. That could be like a logistic regression or basic regression, depending on the problem that you're trying to focus on. And then stuff around the outside might be data governance. So how do you develop a policy and strategy to look at the security and classification and data quality of all that information? That's another specialization in itself, and there are some really good courses for that too. So I think there's a lot of opportunity there depending on what you want to focus on. I think just making sure those courses align. There's also tertiary education as well, and they tend to sort of focus on data and analytics or data science. There's some weakness, I think, in data governance.
Thanks, John. I guess, Brendan, if you can have your view on that as well, please.
Yeah, just adding to what Sean said, depending on what stage you're at, where if you're right at the start of your career, I know Udemy makes a number of their data courses free about once a month. So at the moment, some of their Python, SQL, and data analytics basics courses are free. They seem to bring that up every month. If you're further in on your career, there's a few interesting courses on Coursera, especially if you're moving into cloud platforms. There's a few really interesting ones. I know the Google Cloud one's free on Coursera as well. But that's about all I've got to add to that at the moment.
Thanks, Brenton. I guess if Sean or anyone else, if you would like to add anything further to this session, Nahid, any last sort of a word from you?
Yeah, no, that was really good session. Well, thank you, everyone. There's a lot of insight. Thanks to you, especially Sean. Yeah, I sort of agree with everyone Sean said about all those courses. It just but it really depends on where you're at and then actually where you want to get. So data and analytics is sort of a broad sort of range. So and then not even looking into that, like a same position title might mean different things in different organizations. So it really depends on sort of which area you want to be an expert at, or which one is your sort of highest priority, and go and try to sort of maybe do your research around that area first, because otherwise you will sort of get into a sort of shallow knowledge of everything, which is just still good. Not saying that it's bad, but I guess that might not get you a job to start with.
That's really good. And I think the other thing to add as well, there are some groups that you've created, Freya, and I think they're really helpful. So some of those groups cover data engineering. I asked for one to be created around workforce analytics, because that was sort of my original background. But I think anyone who is interested in that particular specialization, jump in, start a conversation, ask questions or share ideas. I think there are a few eager people who are keen to help or work with you, and perhaps is a more streamlined way as well.
Great. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us in this session. I hope you got some value out of it. As usual, we will post the recording of this session in the community. And if you have any further questions, please feel free to ask, whether once the recording is uploaded, or as Sean said, you can join the groups, or you can just pick any topic or all of them if you are interested, and share your insights and idea. Thank you so much, Kuldeep, for adding some new information. I think it was great, and I think that's the value of having live audiences, to be able to hear it straight away from you guys. I although it was a little bit out of my league, as it was too technical, I still enjoyed it, and I hope that it's value to people who join the 30 days challenge, and whether they are starting their career in the data, or they are excelling and they just upskilling. I hope that it was some value to you. It was great to see you, and look forward to our future sessions, and have a good afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks.
Thanks. Bye.